Welcome to Olympus, the podcast that will guide you through the cosmos and Greek myths to find the path to self-awareness. In the darkness of the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a small celestial body discovered in 1918 orbits silently. It's called 889 Erynia, a name that evokes ancient fears and uncomfortable truths. With its few kilometers in diameter, this asteroid completes its journey around the Sun in just over 4 years, invisible to our eyes, but present, constant, like the memory of something we cannot forget. The astronomers chose this name deliberately. The Erinyes, in Greek tradition, were the goddesses of persecution, those who chased the guilty to the ends of the world and beyond. Just as the Erinyes granted no rest to their targets, so 889 Erynia never stops, following its elliptical orbit with the same relentless patience. And perhaps there is something deeply fitting in the fact that this celestial body is so small and difficult to observe. The consequences of our actions, after all, often reach us from directions we hadn't anticipated. The Erinyes were born from blood, and this is a detail we must not overlook. When Cronus, urged on by his mother Gaia, castrated his father Uranus with a sickle, the drops of blood that fell upon the earth generated these terrible divinities. They were not created by the Olympian gods. They do not belong to the luminous order of Zeus. They are more ancient, more primitive, closer to the original chaos. Ovid describes them with hair of serpents, smoking torches in their hands, eyes dripping tears of blood. There are 3 of them according to tradition: Alecto, she who knows no rest; Tisiphone, the avenger of murder; Megaira, the envious one. And their function is to persecute those who violate the sacred bonds of blood. Their most famous target was Orestes, the son of Agamemnon, who killed his own mother Clytemnestra to avenge his father's murder. It did not matter that Orestes had acted for justice. He had spilled maternal blood, and this was enough. Here is the paradox the Erinyes embody. Their persecution is blind, lacking that measure which distinguishes justice from retaliation. Yet they are guardians of a primordial balance. They remind us that within every system of justice we have the ancient impulse of vengeance, and that the task of civilization is to contain this force, not to deny it.
Here we must pause and question ourselves with the sincerity that only inner dialogue allows. When we suffer a wrong, what truly stirs in our soul? If we observe carefully, we will almost always find 2 distinct impulses that intertwine and become confused. The first is the desire to make whoever made us suffer, suffer. We want them to feel our same pain. We want to see in their eyes the fear we felt. We want the whole world to witness their humiliation. This is the impulse of vengeance, and it is deeply human. The second impulse is different. We want what is crooked to be straightened. We want the broken order to be restored. We want there to be a proportion between the fault and the consequence. This is the impulse of justice, and it is equally human. The difference between these 2 movements of the soul lies not in the intensity of the feeling, but in its direction. Vengeance looks backward to the past and seeks to annul it by inflicting equivalent pain. Justice looks forward to the future and seeks to build an order in which similar wrongs do not repeat themselves. Vengeance is personal. It concerns me, what I feel. Justice is impersonal. It concerns a principle that transcends my particular situation. This is why the wrathful person, even when pursuing a guilty party, rarely produces true justice. Their action springs from passion, not from reason, and passion knows no measure. It strikes too hard or too weak, and, in either case, corrupts the end with the inadequacy of the means. Virtue, the sages teach us, lies in the middle, not in indifference before evil, but in the capacity to respond to evil with the proportion and measure that evil itself lacked. To be just means knowing how to feel the right indignation at the right moment, toward the right person, in the right measure. It is a most difficult art, perhaps the most difficult of all, because it requires mastering our own passions at the very moment when they are most violent. How do we translate this subtle distinction into the concreteness of our daily lives? Let us consider some situations that all of us, sooner or later, find ourselves facing. A colleague takes credit for our work. The first reaction, immediate and understandable, is the desire to unmask them publicly, to humiliate them in front of everyone, to make them feel the same frustration we feel. This is the voice of the Erinyes within us, the primordial impulse of retaliation. But let us stop a moment. What do we really want to achieve? If our goal is for the credit to be recognized by those it belongs to, there are ways to reach it that do not require the destruction of the other person. We can document our contribution, speak with those who need to know, build a reputation that speaks for itself over time. If instead our goal is to see the other person suffer, then we are yielding to vengeance, and vengeance always leaves us emptier than before.
A friend betrays us, reveals one of our secrets, speaks badly of us behind our back. The impulse is to cut off all ties, to counterattack with equally damaging revelations, to build alliances against them. But justice asks something different of us. It asks us to understand before acting, to verify the facts before condemning, to proportion the response to the gravity of the offense. Perhaps that betrayal deserves the end of the friendship. Perhaps it deserves only a serious conversation and a new definition of boundaries. Only a mind free from fury can distinguish between these cases. A family member wounds us with cruel words during an argument. We know exactly what to say to wound them in return. We know their weak points. We could reduce them to silence in an instant. This is the temptation of family vengeance, the most insidious because it feeds on intimacy. But every word spoken to wound creates a wound we will then have to heal if we want to preserve the bond. Justice, in this case, might simply mean silence, not the silence of surrender, but the silence of one who knows that some battles are not worth winning. It might mean returning to the subject in a moment of calm, when reason has resumed its place. It might mean forgiving, not because the offense was not real, but because resentment is a poison we drink, hoping it will harm the other person. There exists yet another, even subtler case, when the injustice is not directed at us, but at someone who cannot defend themselves. Here the temptation is the opposite. Instead of yielding to vengeance, we yield to indifference. It's none of our business. We don't want to create problems for ourselves. Who are we to intervene? But justice, true justice, also requires the courage to expose oneself. Not the aggressiveness of the avenger, but the firmness of one who says, "This is not right," and acts accordingly, accepting the consequences of their own gesture. In every situation, the question to ask ourselves is not, how can I make them pay, but what does justice require in this moment? The first question makes us slaves to our resentment. The second elevates us to the role of guardians of an order that transcends us. The first isolates us in our pain. The second connects us to something greater. The impulse toward vengeance should not be suppressed by force, because what we suppress always returns more violently. It must be recognized, understood, and then redirected toward nobler ends. The anger at injustice suffered can become energy to build a more just world, if we learn to separate it from the desire to cause suffering. I leave you with a question. The last time you acted against someone who had wronged you, did you do it to restore a balance or to satisfy a need for revenge? Only you know the honest answer, and in that answer lies the beginning of a transformation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of Olympus, the podcast about the cosmos, Greek myths, and self-awareness.